Hello everyone and welcome back to Kralizec Gaming. My name is Kralizec. Today is the 29th of November and let's get straight into news. As we are a little bit late today, I'm very sorry for that. I had some personal things I needed to sort out. I was hoping to be back a little bit earlier, but it took a little bit more time than expected. Today we got 3 pieces of news to take a look at. All of them fairly interesting, none of them really bad, to be honest. So we will start with EA losing about $3.1 billion in value in stocks. Then a national committee for games policy being established, and the release date for the Hearthstone expansion, Kobolds and Catacombs. So let's start with EA, as it's the arbitrary topic, it seems to be. So after the whole shit with the loot boxes, gambling and everything happened, well, the stock markets haven't really responded well to this. It's no surprise to this. The stock markets are very, very sensitive to consumer feelings or moods, let's call it. And whenever the consumers are pissed at some company, the stocks usually drop quite heavily. So EA's drop has dropped by 8.5%. That's about 3.1 billion in shareholder value. That's a pretty big number. Actually, let me quickly calculate what that means for the total value of EA. 8.5 multiplied by 3.1, that's 26. So this 20, oh this, man, I'm not good at math. I'm really not good at math. 3.1 divided by 8.5 multiplied by 100. So the total value of EA is somewhere around $36 billion. So this 8.5% market loss is about 3.1. So it's a big number. It's all related also to the sales of Battlefront 2, which have dropped more than 60% compared to its predecessor. But I think what the largest issue is probably the investigations by many government agencies around the world that say that loot boxes could possibly be gambling in the future, and EA has put a lot of their eggs into the loot boxes basket lately. So shareholders are obviously worried what could this mean for the future, because in the worst possible scenarios, the sales of the games that include loot boxes could be disallowed, or at least, at the very least, not until you're 18 years old. And since that could prove a problem, for example, for people who actually own the game currently, for example, through digital distribution and aren't 18 years old. I wondered how that would be resolved. That could certainly pose a problem to EA, because these digital services would probably have to take the game away from these consumers. I'm really not sure how would this be handled. I'm going to guess it probably depends on a state-to-state basis. Yeah, that's probably the case. But very least, it means that any future games that would include loot boxes would not be capable of being sold. By the way, this isn't only about EA games. Remember that. This concerns the whole industry and could prove a problem for especially the big publishing houses, as those are the most ones with a lot of loot boxes. Also, I wonder what could this mean for free-to-play games, as those would probably have to change their models at least slightly, at the very least, if these new pieces of legislation actually come through. But in a bit more positive news on the same subject, something that is called, what was it exactly? The National Committee for Games Policy. It's a new, essentially, group of people who have decided that they want to fix this part of the industry, more precisely the games as a service part of the industry. So there are two halves to this group. One is a think tank, and the other is a self-regulatory organization. So the think tank is not really there to show like any stances for the public or anything like that. They're more like a research team. That's probably the best way to describe a think tank. They should provide data, they should maybe even propose solutions, but more they're more like an inner thing for the National Committee. And the self-regulatory organization is there to take legal actions actually against very bad video game publishers or companies in general, and to hopefully actually make companies probably follow some standards, because right now it's essentially the Wild West when it comes to microtransactions and loot boxes and all these things. I'm really hoping that this group could maybe, let's call it, restore balance into the gaming industry, because right now the balance is severely not balanced. The NCGP, as the acronym is, also has a consumer center where you as a player will be allowed to report video game companies that do some sort of offense. And you know, on one hand, I'm really glad that this thing came to existence, and especially that they will, at least the very beginning, focus probably on things like ridiculous loot boxes and absurd price for, you know, little pieces of loot in game and pay to win systems. In the future, I'm quite scared that people who will try to be pushing what's called as diversity politics in games, and I'm scared they will just try to push ideologies through this committee that will likely gain quite a bit of power, as has been established after this big of a controversy, and companies will probably came to listen to it if it comes with a good solution for the loot box issue. If it does, then the NCGP will probably gain quite a lot of power, and that if then ideological groups figure out a way to just keep complaining until this committee feels like, oh man, we're getting so many complaints, so this must be a huge issue, that they will start proposing things like, so if you want your game to be good, you have to have at least this amount of these characters and this amount of these characters. When this I mean like transgender characters and black characters. And obviously this isn't a good way to do stories. Stories shouldn't be based on diversity. Stories should be based on whether they're good. So can you, for example, imagine if somebody would try to make a game that would be set in medieval Europe, and they would be said, so you have to have at least 20% black people? No, it wouldn't be authentic at all. But that's what I'm afraid this sort of system might be used to. So be sure to keep this in mind and not give the NCGP way too much praise. Otherwise, it will gain too much power, and then the power will be abused. Any sort of power will eventually be abused. I think it's even like a law or something. Maybe it's like a law of physics. If you have power, it will be used. Okay, our last piece of news. This one is just purely good. We finally know the date for the new Heroes World of Warcraft expansion called Kobolds and Catacombs. I personally am really looking forward to it. I might be returning to the game for at least a few weeks. That's usually when I return after releasing a new expansion. Especially as I play only Arena, so I don't really care about the cards, like getting the cards. I don't buy packs, I just buy entries to Arena, and usually I can mostly pay for them just through winning. Yeah, I'm not bad at Arena actually. So before we get to the release date, we should repeat some of the information of Kobolds and Catacombs. It will come with 135 new cards, including new card types such as spellstones or identified items. Also, a completely new way to play the game that will be completely free to play, called the Dungeon Runs, which are essentially single-player PvE modes where you start with a small deck of a few cards and you get more. It seems actually special cards that are going to be available only in that run, only in that mode inside there, and on the end you will get some reward. I'm really hoping that this mode will count to the daily 100 gold limit, and it will also count for quests. If that is the case, I might actually play the game quite a lot. I'm really looking for the PvE mode. Going to stream that quite a lot. It will be releasing on December 7th, so that's only pretty much a week away from now in North America, and on the December 8th in the rest of the world, more specifically Europe. So if anybody's looking forward to playing some Hearthstone, this is the time to do it. And that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry again for the delay. It shouldn't be happening anymore, at least not very often. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to give us a thumbs up and to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we will be providing you with daily gaming news every single day. That's sort of the point of the world, daily. If you're watching this on Steam, be sure to give us your upvote and to also follow our blog. And with that being said, see you guys later with more gaming content.